Hey everyone, Gary Simon here. Welcome to this 100% free brand new course on learning Bootstrap 4 by example. Now, why learn by example? Well, personally, that's how I really learn best. I don't like those courses that are all fundamental based and then last for hours. I like to learn by example and to actually learn by doing. So what we're going to be doing is first outlining, how do we integrate Bootstrap 4, and there's various ways to do that. And then throughout the rest of the course, we're just going to learn by doing, and it's going to really give you a lot of confidence going forward. All right, so in this initial part, we're going to go ahead and do a preview and a look at the project that we're going to learn how to build with Bootstrap 4. All right, let's get started. All right, let's go ahead and launch our project that I will show you how to build 100%. Okay, so this is the layout that we're going to be building from scratch using Bootstrap 4. Now, as you can see, we have a nice hero section here, then some secondary supporting content that will help us understand the grid system, which it's also using font awesome icons, as you can see. And also from here, we have a form section at the bottom. Now, if we take this browser and shrink it in, we'll see that it is fully responsive. And of course, our navigation works as well. And even though this isn't like a massive layout with a ton of content, we're going to be covering a lot of ground as it pertains to Bootstrap 4. So you're going to learn how to integrate Bootstrap 4 with a modern development workflow structured with Gulp, which is a JavaScript task runner. Don't worry, if you've never heard of it before, I'll explain it. You're going to learn how to customize Bootstrap 4 Sass settings, and ultimately how to use the power of Bootstrap 4 classes to minimize the amount of CSS that you need to write. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, like other similar frameworks, you're able to install Bootstrap 4 project through two different methods. Now, one is quick and dirty, and the other one is most preferable, but it takes a bit more time. Now, the key differences between each of these methods is the time it takes to get started versus the file size and loading time. And there are a couple other differences that we will take a look at shortly. So the quick way, and this method is the most ideal when you're working on a prototype or a wireframe. It allows you to quickly and easily get up and running with Bootstrap 4 by simply copying and pasting literally 4 lines of HTML onto a page. Now, the downside to this method is a lack of customization options, as it's strictly CSS and not Sass, and also load times. Now, when you use this method, you're importing the entire Bootstrap library, which is almost always unnecessary. This results in unnecessary file sizes, thus longer load times. Now still, if you're working on a prototype or a project where the load time isn't a factor, this is the quickest way to get started. So assuming you have an HTML page, you simply copy and paste the following line between the head tags, and then you include the necessary JavaScript includes just before the closing body tag. And that's it. So you're now able to write HTML and harness the power of Bootstrap 4. Now in this course, however, we're not going to use this method. We're going to set up a more robust development environment and use the Sass version of Bootstrap 4. All right, so again, Bootstrap 4, it comes in two different flavors. It's straight up CSS, which is what the CDN uses and the method that we just discussed uses, and Sass. Now, Sass is a preprocessor that allows you to write more dynamic CSS. It then takes this Sass CSS and compiles it down just to standard CSS. So Bootstrap 4 Sass allows you to make more customizations and choose which elements of the Bootstrap 4 framework you would like to include based on your project's needs. So this ultimately leads to a reduced file size, which is necessary for your website or app's performance. So a popular package manager is NPM, or the Node Package Manager, and you're going to need to install Node.js, which includes the Node Package Manager. So if you've never installed it before, you go to nodejs.org, you click on downloads, and you choose Windows or Mac installer, and you download it and just run through the typical setup process. And then once that's done, you can load up your command line, and you could type in npm-v, and it will give you a version number. All right, So assuming you have it installed and you're all ready to go, let's go ahead and create a directory. So mkdir game layout. All right, now we're going to cd into it. All right, great. So here we've created a new folder. Now let's go ahead and type in npm init to create a package.json file. So npm init. All right, now it's going to prompt us with a series of questions. Now I'm going to just hit enter for all of these. All right, so now we're back at our prompt here. All right, so the purpose of this package.json file is that it creates a configuration for our project. So when we install Bootstrap 4, for instance, it's going to add a package name along with the version to this file. And that way in the future, if you need to install this project on another environment, such as a server, you can run npm install and it will download all the necessary packages and dependencies based on this package.json file. All right, so let's go ahead and install Bootstrap 4 with npm install. So let me clear this out. And I'm going to type in npm install Bootstrap. And right now it's at alpha 6. So I'm going to put in an at 4.0.0-alpha.6. And then we're going to add 2 dashes and save, which will save it as a dependency in our package.json file. All right, as you can see, it's very quick. And so also at the time of writing this, by the way, Bootstrap 4 may be officially released, or maybe perhaps it has come out with another alpha or released candidate. So you can just Google Bootstrap 4 and see which version it's at, and you can install that as needed. Okay. Now if you hop into a code editor, I'm using Visual Studio Code, which is 100% free. You can Google it and download it. And we're in our game layout folder. And we can see we have our package.json that the npm init command ran. Notice under dependencies, we see Bootstrap with the version number. And then we also have a node modules folder with 3 different folders inside of it. So first we have Bootstrap, and this contains the CSS and Sass version of our Bootstrap 4. We also have jQuery, which is used by Bootstrap in various components. And then we also have Tether, which is a library for element positioning. So each of these folders must be added to our project, but we don't currently have a project to work with. So in the next section, that's what we're going to work with and get set up is a development environment. All right, so we already have a project with Bootstrap integrated, so let's create a more robust environment that we can use while we work on our Bootstrap 4 project. So in the project root folder, we're going to create a new folder called source. So let's collapse this. We're going to create a new folder here. We'll call this src. All right, and then inside of it, we're going to create 4 more folders. So with that folder selected, we'll create a new folder here called assets. And this is where our graphics and such will go. We'll also create another one called CSS. This is where our compiled CSS will go. We'll also create another one called SCSS, which is the Sass file extension that we will use. And then finally, we'll create another one called JS for JavaScript. All right, so now what we want to do is inside of the source folder, we're going to create a new index.html. All right, so come out here, new file, index.html. All right, so, oops, currently that is not in source. Make sure that's in source. There we go. And now for the written version of this tutorial or this lesson, you can go ahead and copy, and I'll provide that in project files if you're not watching this in YouTube, for instance, and paste this right here. All right, so there's a few things happening that's worth mentioning. So let's go ahead. I'm going to hit Control B to get rid of that sidebar. So everything's pretty much standard here. We have our head, and inside of here, the parts to really pay attention to are right here. And so the first one is we're importing a Google Web font right here called Railway. So that's what we're going to be using. And then also we have Font Awesome right here, which provides you with very easy to use icons. We'll be using that. We're also referencing /CSS bootstrap.css. Of course, this file doesn't exist currently. And then also a style.css, which is where some custom CSS rule sets will go. And then inside of our body, just before the closing body tag, is our JavaScript references. So we have jQuery, which is required for Bootstrap 4. We have tether, which is also required. And then, of course, we have bootstrap min.js. All right, so of course, these files right here don't exist yet, and neither do these two files. So what we need to do in order to remedy that is, before we get to that portion, actually, I'm jumping ahead. We're going to go create another file in our SCSS, our Sass folder. We're going to call it here style.scss. And inside of it, we're going to create a variable and a simple rule set for the body. So the variable is BG color. We're just setting it to blue. And then in the body, in the background, we're setting it to this variable right here. So the background of our website will be just this standard, kind of ugly blue color. And this is just for test purposes, just to make sure that the Sass preprocessor is working and converting how we want it to. So that leads us to the next section, all right? And that's working with Gulp. All right, so Gulp is a JavaScript task runner, and it's going to help us solve this empty folder issue along with Sass compiling and live browser reloading. So to get started, we have to hop back into the command line and use npm. So let's go ahead and save these two files here, by the way. All right, so what we need to do is use npm to install Gulp with browser sync as well, and another package called gulp-sass, and then we're going to save it as a development dependency. All right, so hit enter and let that run through. All right, so once that's finished, let's go ahead and hop back into our code editor. And for our code editor, we're going to take a look real quick back in the node modules. Remember there was just 3 folders there before? Well, now there are, after refreshing, many more. As you can see, these are all other packages that those 3 packages that we installed rely on. And of course, you'll find in here, somewhere embedded in here, you'll find the Gulp and the Gulp Sass and the other package that we installed. So that command that we ran for npm install, all it does is just place a bunch of folders inside of that node modules folder that we saw. So we actually have to use Gulp, we have to create a gulp file.js in the project's root. So I'll just click on package real quick to make sure we're in the project root, and I'll create a new file called gulp file.js. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is create variables that reference the 3 packages that we just installed. So again, following the written version of this tutorial, I'm going to paste in those 3 right here. So the way this is set up is we have a var gulp, browser sync, and Sass, and we're using require, and this is a reference to the actual folder name, or the package name that's located in node modules. All right, simple enough. Now, of course, if you've never really touched Gulp or even much JavaScript, this is going to look a little bit foreign, but don't worry, with a little time and persistence, you'll be able to understand it. So the next thing that we have to do is create a task. So Gulp is set up, once again, it's a task runner. So the first thing that we need to do is to take our Sass files and convert them into CSS that a browser can actually read. So to do that, I'm going to create a task here, and I'm going to paste this right in. All right, so the first thing, we use the gulp.task method, and we're naming this particular task Sass right here. Sorry, I'm kind of losing my speech there. Inside of it, we create a function, and inside we return a gulp.source method, and all this here is just telling us is where is the location of these Sass files that we want to work with. So we're passing an array because we have 2 different locations. So we have our node modules, Bootstrap, SCSS, bootstrap.scss version. So this is the Bootstrap Sass. And then also separated by a comma, we have a source in our SCSS folder, which we created. And then we're saying we're using the wildcard asterisk to say any Sass file inside of this SCSS right there. We could, if we knew we were only working with one file, for instance, we could just make this style.scss, which is the name that we gave it up here. And then after that, we used a pipe method to say, okay, next what we want to happen is we're going to actually use Sass, which will convert this Sass into CSS. Then we use another pipe to say that next what we want to happen, we want to take that result and we're going to use gulp.destination or DEST. And this is where it's going to take that CSS that it just created or compiled, and it's going to place it in a source CSS folder, which again we created. And then we're going to use a pipe here for browser sync, which is in reference to this variable up there, and .stream, and this will notify the browser and will reload. Okay, so hopefully you kind of get it. We're not done yet though. We have to, because Bootstrap 4 does use JavaScript, we're going to take the JavaScript, the necessary JavaScript files from the Bootstrap and also jQuery folders, also Tether as well, and we're going to move them into the JS folder that we created. So the next section I'm going to paste is right here. So we're creating a task called JS. We're going to return the gulp source. So again, it's the same thing as up here. We're just referencing the location of these JS files. So we have the Bootstrap file, jQuery, and Tether right here. Then we're just saying we're not actually doing anything to it. We're not running any type of minification or whatever, which you can if you want. We're just moving it into a source JS folder. And then again, we're running this here to notify the browser. All right. And then finally, we have two more tasks to create. So the first one right here, this is a task called serve. And we're passing in this time, in the second argument, we're passing in an array which just contains a reference to Sass. So Sass will run automatically when serve is ran. You'll see how that works momentarily. Then we're using browser sync.init to initialize a server that's starting in our source folder. So this is a local static server that will run on localhost 3000. You'll see that momentarily as well. And then we have gulp watch right here. We have two of these. That's going to watch our Bootstrap file if we make changes, or any changes as well in the source SCSS folder that we're going to be writing in. So every time we make an update where we save it, it's going to reload the browser essentially. And that way we don't have to manually hit refresh. And it's also going to run Sass, the Sass task up here. And then also if we make change to HTML on any type of change, and if we update it or save, then we're going to reload the browser. Okay. Then finally, just one line down here is gulp task. The default gulp task means if we just type in gulp in the command line, then what's going to run? Well, two different things that we specified here in this array. We have a JS task and the serve task. So when we run gulp, it's going to start the server, it's going to launch our browser, and it's also going to run this JS here to move files from node modules into our source JS folder. So let's save it, and let's go back to the command line. And if we did everything correctly, this should work. So let me clear this and just type gulp. All right. And there we go. So your browser should load up. If I hit Control-Shift-I, make sure you go to console. There's no errors. That means Bootstrap is now fully loaded and ready to go. All right, so in the next section, we're going to go ahead and get focused on making Sass-specific customizations while we work with Bootstrap 4 and our. So Bootstrap 4 has a series of variables, mix-ins, and other settings that are predefined when you install it with a package manager. So these settings address colors, typography, spacing, and more. Now, if you want to change these settings, there's a specific file that you can use to redefine their values. So in the code editor, let's go ahead to Node Modules. We're going to go to the Bootstrap folder, and we're going to go down here to custom.scss. All right, so we can see that it's labeled Bootstrap overrides, and the instructions are to copy the variables from variables.sass to this file to override the default values without modifying source files. All right, so this file right here in custom is where we make adjustments to the theme colors and those other settings that I mentioned. All right, so what we want to do first before doing that, let's take a look in variables.scss right here. All right, so we scroll up, we have a table of contents because this is a massive file. So as you can see, we have a lot of options from which we can go ahead and make specific customizations to. Usually that would be things like colors, at the very least. So down here, this is the color section, and we could see that it defines, or it assigns color names to their specific hex values. So green, blue, yellow, pink, purple, whatever. And then also down here, we have our brand. So primary, success, info, warning, danger, and verse. Now you can also notice at the end of every single one of the variables that are defined within this file, we have this little default right there added at the end. And what that basically means is it kind of works the opposite of the important rule. So if you have a variable that has not been defined elsewhere, such as in the custom Sass file, which we'll do momentarily, then it will default to this value here. All right. So what we want to do is make some custom adjustments based on the layout that we're going to be designing here throughout this course. So I'll bring that up real quickly. And here's a preview of it, just a screenshot. And as you can see, we're using this sort of teal color. So let's go ahead and define that. So we'll redefine that inside of the Sass file. So, or the custom Sass file rather. So what we want to do is I'm just going to copy all these just in the section up here for the colors. And we'll go back to our custom Sass file and I'll paste them. Now I'm not going to just redefine all these, but really just one. So we have that teal color, or turquoise basically, which is closest to green. So I'm gonna get rid of everything with exception to green. Also all of this and everything else except for brand primary. So I've really only just used two here. So the color scheme that, or the hex value of the color that we want to use is actually 00FFC4. Now we also must remove default, or this will not work. All right, and then we also have our brand primary. We're going to assign this to green. Also remove default. All right. We also have a couple other ones. So another one is called link color. And again, this is defined within the variables Sass file. And we're going to make this green. And then also we have a body BG for the background color. And this one, we're going to make a specific hex value of 1A, 1B, 1D. And that's like basically almost a black. And then finally, we have one more that we'll define, which is for our type, our font family. I'm just going to paste it in here, and that is font family sans serif. And I'm changing the primary font to Railway, which we've included in the index.html from the Google Web Fonts. So we'll go ahead and save this. And now we're done with any of the customizations basically that we want to work here. There's one other one that we will be defining later on in the course based on spacing, but we don't need to do that now. So I'm going to get rid of all that. We're going to collapse our node modules folder. We're going to go into source. We're going to go into our style.sass, and I'm going to get rid of this, all this stuff right here, and just hit save. So now what we want to do is go back to our console. We're going to run gulp. And if you already do have it running, just hit Control-C and hit Y to get out of there, and then rerun gulp. And this here is the result. As you can see, it's using that dark, it's almost a black background color that we define in that custom Sass file. So that's how you know it is now working and using what we need based on that custom file. So in the next section, we're going to begin writing the HTML for the very top portion of our project, which will be revolving around the navbar and the navigation. Okay, so let's go ahead and define our navbar. So we will be working within a source in our index.html file right here. Okay, so the very first thing we need to do, and again, I'll refer back to the mockup. As you can see here, we have this this background. You can just barely see it. It's like a watermark background of a game screenshot, and we need to create an ID or div that will span all the way across. So let's go ahead and define that HTML real quick. So it's going to be simply div ID equals hero, and we'll define that momentarily here. Let's go ahead and keep on focusing on the HTML. So Control B will get rid of that sidebar there in Visual Studio Code. And then inside of here, we're going to use our first Bootstrap 4 specific class, which is div class equals container. All right, so this gives you basically a fixed width container that it does adjust and is responsive based on the viewport width. Then we also have div class of row. All right, so inside of here is where the actual navbar goes. That's the very next element that we have to worry about. So to define a navbar, we use nav and then class of navbar. All right. Next, we're going to define navbar toggleable -md. And what this does is it specifies that it should toggle or show on medium viewports and down. And then also we're going to add navbar -inverse. And this is specified for dark backgrounds, which it makes the navbar light. Now, the inverse case of this, if it's a light background, you can use navbar -light. All right. And again, where am I pulling these classes out? Well, certainly not out of my butt. Again, the Bootstrap 4 documentation. All right. So next, we're going to have the actual game logo. So we're going to define an ahref, and it's just going to go nowhere. And then we give it a class of navbar brand. And again, this is specific to Bootstrap 4. And then also text-primary, and that will be bound to our primary color that we specified in that custom class file previously. And then we're going to give it an ID of logo, and then we'll be able to reference it. And then game logo. All right, so we'll save that. And this is what your result should look like so far. So none navigation, but this is our navbar. Okay, so now what we want to do is add in the HTML for our actual button, for the toggle button. So we do this by defining an HTML element button, and then a class of navbar -toggler, right? And then navbar toggler right. So navbar toggler right, and that will move it over to the right essentially. And then we give it a type of button. And this next part is very important. We give it a attribute of data -toggle, and then equals collapse, and then data -target equals, and then we put in the ID of the HTML element that we want to make it show or reveal upon clicking. So that will be our menu, which we haven't yet done. We'll do that just after this element. So navbar supported content. And then we're going to define area controls equals the same ID here without the hash sign there. And then I'm simply going to paste in two more right here and here. And by the way, these area specific attributes, this stands for Accessible Rich Internet Applications, and they're basically there to make the content accessible for people with disabilities, so with screen readers and stuff like that. So are they required? No, but it's a good thing to add them. So I'm going to go ahead and close this element out, and we're going to go back down here. And so just underneath our button, this is where the actual menu will reside. So right now it's going to be we encase a unordered list or a UL element inside of a div. So the div is going to be div class equals collapse, navbar collapse, justify content end, and this will help push things over to the right. And then ID, the ID of this element has to match the ID of the data target right here. So I'm going to copy that right there. We'll go ahead and close this and close that div. And then inside of here, this is where our unordered list starts. So UL class equals navbar hyphen nav. Again, this is all specific to Bootstrap 4 classes. Inside of here, we're going to have an li of a class nav hyphen item. And then also inside of there, we're going to have a link. So a class equals nav hyphen link. Again, this is all specific to Bootstrap 4 classes. We'll make it the primary color of our color theme, text primary. href, it's not going anywhere. And then we'll name this first one overview. All right. Then we close out that nav item. So now we can copy these 3 lines and paste them 3 times. And then we just simply change up the name here based on our mockup. So specs, fac, and purchase. All right, so let's save that. And yeah, it definitely won't work just yet. I forgot to actually close out this element right here, this button. So let's go back up there real quickly. We have to add a span element inside of here with a class of navbar toggler icon. And then close out the button. This will actually give us our, make sure you close that out as well, our 3-lined hamburger icon menu there. So now we'll save that. Oh yeah, and I have bottom, so yeah, you might want to fix that. Jeez. And then save, and there we go. So obviously some work needs to be done to this, and let's go ahead and fix that real quick. So we're going to hop into our style.sass file. So let's hit Control B, style.sass. Okay. The first thing we want to reference is the navbar class itself. All right, so everything will be embedded in here, which Sass allows you to do. So what we'll do is first we're going to give it a width of 100% and then a background of none and important. And next after that, we'll go ahead and we're going to reference a media query. So media max width of 34 EM. So we're saying just on mobile devices only. We're going to say background is going to be black and important. So if I save this, we'll see now it moves over to the right. And if I bring it in, by the way, we can see how this toggles right at the medium desktop size. And it also works. And if it toggles, it will show a black bar here at the top, which you don't have to add. I just decided to. All right, and coming down after that, we're going to reference navbar toggler, change the cursor to a pointer, and then outline 0, because I don't like that blue outline that applies. Also nav link, text transform, uppercase. Also font weight is going to be bold. By the way, this text transform uppercase, you don't necessarily have to add it here. You could add that as a class actually onto the right here. And I believe the class is text-uppercase. That way you don't have to write out that if you don't wish. We will be doing that in the future, but I wanted to show you both ways. So then finally also nav item, and we're going to change the padding here. So I mean right now if I save this, we'll see where we're currently at right here. Things are a little bit too close, so we'll fix that. All right, let's go ahead and put in just padding 0 on the top and bottom and 1 rem units on the right and left. We're going to use another media query here, max width of 34 EM. And we're going to put padding 0 So we're just putting padding 0 on everything at a smartphone resolution. And then also nav link, which is embedded within nav item. And we're going to just put in a media query again of max width, 34 EM. This is the last rule set we're going to do. Font weight is normal. And we're going to make the color white just to separate it from the logo a little bit. So now if we save this and go back, things are pushed out a little bit more. And there we go. All right, great. So now in the next section, we're going to focus on the hero section and getting the background and all that going, along with a heading and subheading and a little graphic. All right, I'll see you then. All right, now the first thing I want you guys to do is see we have this assets folder, which is currently empty, is to download the project files. So if you're watching this on YouTube, for instance, go to my site and you have to register and you'll be able to access the project files for this course. Otherwise, if you're watching this on a different network, then the project files will be there somewhere for you to find. Okay, so I'm going to right click and just reveal in Explorer. And let me get this size down quite big right there. So inside of this folder, we're going to place just, I believe, three graphic assets. So I have a different folder here. We're going to just put them in there. Actually, I don't want to get rid of them there. There we go. So you should have BG overlay in screen 1. That's the only images that we're going to be using. All right. So inside of, or at the top of our styles CSS, we're going to reference our hero ID, which, if you recall, was our very first HTML ID. So hero, we're going to put in a background of URL, and this is going to be assets, bg.jpg, and no repeat. Then background size, we'll make cover. That fills everything up, and then background position, we're going to put it at 0, and then from the top 60%. This is going to actually push things up. All right, so now if we go back here, we're only going to see a portion of it because we don't have enough content inside of the hero yet to push it all the way down to see the full background there. So let's go ahead and work on that section. So where this is going to reside is actually just after this div right here. We can see our nav, we have a closing div, and then right here. All right, and so this is actually, this closing div is in relation to our container right here. And so inside of there, we're going to put in a div class of a new row, and we're going to give it another custom class of hero content, and then we're just going to leave it for now. We are going to add more classes to that momentarily, but I wanted to show you the result in the browser first so you can understand it. And then inside of this div, we're going to have our first usage of columns here in Bootstrap 4. So we're going to reference call hyphen the screen size that we want to target, which is going to be medium, so MD, and then a length of 6 columns, and then also a column of small, so SM, and then 12. So we'll see how this works momentarily in the browser. So let's close that out. And then we're going to reference our H1 for our heading. So the class, we have several classes we're going to use that are specific to text. So remember I mentioned before we can use text hyphen uppercase to make them all uppercase by default. We're going to use text center. And this is going to center the text all the way up until we add text hyphen MD for medium left. All right, so medium and greater, this text will be left justified. Anything underneath it will be centered. All right, so now we're going to put in destroy all of humanity. Cheesy headline. And then we're going to simply copy this here and paste it. Hit Control B to get rid of that sidebar. And we're going to change this to an H4. And this text is simply going to be capture enemy territory and beat them down like rodents. Aren't I a great copywriter? All right, so we're going to leave all the same classes here for this as well. So let's save that. And you'll notice we really can't see it because of the text color. So before we look at that, let's go to our style CSS. We're at the top. We're just going to reference body. And then we're going to make color white with 3 Fs. So now we'll go back. Okay. So first we have a couple issues here, obviously. One being there's not much padding and stuff, but let's also bring this in and just show you. Remember, it's all left aligned currently until we get beneath right there at the medium sizes. So now you can see that they are text center and then text left. Okay, so let's fix the padding issue, because we want, you know, when it comes to design, you want a lot of room to breathe, especially when it comes to your hero section. So to do that, what we're going to do is in this class right here for our row, we're going to add a few specific classes for padding on top and bottom. So the way we do this is we put in padding. So this P right here, that's for padding. However, if you wanted to use margin, you would use M. And then you either use top or bottom. So P, so PT, that means padding top. You could put PB for padding bottom, or MT for margin top, or MB for margin bottom. So we're going to put padding on the top and then put a dash, and we're going to specify a screen size for this. So a large. So we're going to put 6. All right, right now that's not going to work because we don't even have a spacing size of 6. So if you recall earlier, I mentioned we're going to have to go back into our custom Sass file to add one more override, and we'll do that momentarily. So then we're going to put in PB large, so padding bottom for large will also be 6. And then we're going to put padding top overall will be 5. Okay, so these numbers right here, 5, 6, 6, the higher the number, the more padding you're going to get. It by default only goes up to 5, but I wanted a little bit more margin than what they were offering. So we're going to add our own size here at 6. So I'm going to save this and we'll just take a look at the result in the browser. Again, we have padding top 5 added already. So let's drag this in a bit. We'll see nothing really changes. Let's go back to our custom Sass, and this is all located inside of right here. All right, so with this open, let's go to our variables, and we're going to find this right here, spacers. We're going to copy this entire section right here. Okay, we're going to go back to our custom. We're going to paste this in, and we're going to get rid of the default rule there. And then we're going to add one more size right there. So we're going to put a comma, a 6, open it up in parentheses, and then the XY, we can just copy this one right here. And instead of by 3, we're going to put by 9. So we're going to have a ton right here. So you can see it goes from like 0.25, 5, 1.5, 3, 9. So we'll save that. And right now we're not watching this file here. So if we go back to our console, we're going to have to rerun this real quickly. So gulp. All right, so now you can see we have a bunch of padding, and it really just makes everything just stand out a little bit better. So now you can see right here, it's all the way using that number 6 version, but then it comes down to 5, which is substantially less and more ideal for these smaller screen sizes. Awesome. Okay. We also have a graphic over here that we imported in the assets. So let's go back to our code editor. We'll go into index.html. We're going to copy this real quickly. So that call right there, paste it. And we're going to get rid of these 2 type elements. And we're going to put in simply one, which is going to be an image source, equals assets overlay.png. Class is hero-image. We're going to reference that ourselves. And then empty, which is margin top, we're going to put it at 5. And then empty, which is margin top at medium reports 0. All right, so save that. Oh, by the way, we also want to add one class up here, text-center, that will center the image. All right, so now if we look at this, it's going to be this large nasty thing right here, and that's because this image is not yet responsive. So what we'll do is head on over to our style Sass. We're going to put in just down here, we're going to put in hero, a class of hero-image, width of 80%. So let's save that. There we go. And then also let's fix this over here. The type doesn't look very good. So we're going to, just above that, we'll put in H1. Font weight will be bold. And then font size will be 3.5 EM. Save that. There we go. All right, much better. So now let's check it out responsively. Everything looks good. All right, and there we go. Okay, so in the next section, we're going to take a look more closely at columns by defining a secondary piece of content that will span across the entire browser down here that will show features associated with the game, essentially. Now, in any responsive front-end framework, the grid is usually the most used element. So in this section, we're going to discover how to use the grid by working on a specific section within the course project. So understanding the Bootstrap 4 grid, it's all easy once you get the basic concepts. All right, so let's first take a look at the course project's mockup in the specific area of the layout that we're going to be working on next in structure with the Bootstrap grid. So right here is going to be the section that's just underneath the hero, as we can see right here, which is where we're currently at in the project. And as we could see in the teal container, we have 3 different blips that describe features about this fictional game. So our task is to use the grid to present this in a browser. So Bootstrap's grid is based on a default 12 columns. So let's go take a look at what this would look like with these 12 columns enabled over this layout. All right, so basically first we have an icon. Now this element right here, here, and here is small enough to occupy a single column, at least on a large desktop view. And so then we have an associated description that goes basically to the right of each column. And so we can see we have 1 column here and then 3 here in this block. So we have 12 total columns to work with, which is how Bootstrap and most other responsive front-end frameworks are used. And we need to try to make our columns all equal up to 12. So we have 3, we have 4 total columns that make up each one. So 3 times 4, you know, go back to elementary school, that is 12. So that's what we want. All right. So let's go back with this in mind to our code editor, and in our index.html, we're going to come outside of the very last div. So all this stuff is contained within our hero div. Now we're going to come outside of it, just above the 3 script tags here. All right, so let's start off with a div class. I'm going to hit Control B, by the way, here in Visual Studio Code to get rid of that sidebar. And equals, and we're going to create a custom class that we're going to reference here called feature wrapper. And we're going to give it another class of BG primary, and this is specific to Bootstrap, and it's just basically saying the background of this element should be our primary color that we defined. All right, so then we're going to have a padding of top, so PT, of 5, a padding of bottom, so PB, -5, and then a margin top of 5, and then also a margin top just on large screen sizes of 0. All right, then inside of there, we're going to do a div class of container. This gives us our fixed center container, and then div class of row. So when you're working with the grid, you always need to first establish a row class, and then inside of it, this is where your individual columns go based on the 12 grid column system. Okay, so the next thing that we want to do is first define the section over here. So if we bring this back up, we'll see we have one column right here. So let's define that. So the way we do that is div class equals call-1. And then inside of there, that's where our icons go. And so we're using font awesome. So we're going to put I class equals FA for font awesome, FA-gamepad. That's the name of the specific icon we want to use. And then we're going to make it larger than default. So FA-2X. Okay. Let's also add another div class for the next section, which is the description. So this is going to be div class equals call-3. And then inside of here, we're going to put in, I'm just going to paste this off screen, copy it off screen rather, and paste it in here. All right, so let's save this and make sure you have the gulp command running in your console so we can look at it in the browser. All right, so here we are. Now the issue here is this text is white, so let's go ahead and fix that real quickly before looking at this a little bit further. Control B, we'll go back to our style.sass file, and I'm simply going to reference our feature wrapper, and we're going to put color 0, 0, 0, 0 for black. All right, now let's go back real quickly to our browser. Okay, so this right here looks exactly as we want it almost. We haven't centered this yet. We're gonna go back real quick. You don't have to do this, by the way. I'm just going to copy this and paste it 3 times and then save. We're gonna go back. Okay, so this looks pretty close to what we want over here, right? Yeah. So what happens though when we drag this in? All right, this is still all good. Nothing seems too cluttered. All right, so now we switch over here to the small version, and look how cluttered it starts to get. This here looks bad. All right, so that means we need to make some responsive adjustments so that each one of these columns here will maintain its own column, and they're going to become stacked on top of each other. So we have to make some adjustments in order for that to work properly. So I'm going to back up just to about there, and we're going to make some changes here to these class names. Okay, so what we're going to change now is instead of just call1, we're going to put in call hyphen a screen size of small and then 12. So what that means when you change this, it's going to mean automatically, let me go ahead and save this. Let me just go back here and see what changes. We can now see that this is occupying its own column. It's not left aligned to this. All right, so we also want to change it or add rather call hyphen medium, which is the next size up right here, to 1. So that'll go back to 1 on medium and large sizes. And so I'm also going to add text center, which is going to center that icon. And I'm also going to add margin bottom -3, and then margin bottom on medium will be 0. So let's go ahead and save this real quick. I'm also going to make adjustments to this. Again, call on small will be 12, and then call on medium and up will be 3. We're going to text center this, and this text will be centered by default. Actually, if I save this real quickly, let me just show you, and you don't have to copy this. I want to show you kind of just before and after when I add these classes, what they each do. All right, so right here, this looks actually pretty good. Now let's come back out and see what happens. All right, so notice how it's still centered right here. We don't really want that. I think it looks better left basically all to the left and left aligned. So what we'll do is after text center on these elements, we're going to put text hyphen also uppercase just to make it all uppercase, and also text hyphen MD for medium and up left. So now let me add a couple more just for margin, and on the bottom right here, we're going to push them away from each other a little bit more. So margin bottom 3, and then margin bottom on medium will be 0. Okay, so now let's save, and I'll get rid of these two. Copy and paste this. Save it. There we go. So now we have this looking good. And there we go. Much better. So I'm going to pause right here real quickly just to customize these, and then I'll show you the code, and then you can pause as well if you wish. Okay, so all I did was change the class of FA sitemap right here from gamepad to sitemap to also line chart, FA line hyphen chart, and then also these custom descriptions. So if I save and go back, there we go. Awesome. Okay, so now hopefully you understand at least a basic sense of how the grid system works and how you can use the sizing to create custom adjustments based on the amount of columns they take up. All right, so in the next section, we're going to go ahead and finish this off by doing a form that will be situated beneath this area right here. All right. All right, so we're going to go ahead and finish our layout right here by adding a third section. So we have our hero section up here with our navigation. We have this feature container down here, and then in the bottom, we'll have an email capture section with a simple form and a call to action button with a text field. All right, so let's go ahead and focus on that. So right here we have our feature wrapper, and this is our teal color down there. So we don't want anything inside of there. It's going to be outside of it completely. So let's go ahead and put in a new div of ID of join container. We're going to give it a class, and we're going to give it some margin or padding rather, to push things away from that teal container. So padding top of large -6, which is our custom sizing class we already added. Padding bottom will be large -6 as well. And then padding top will be 5. All right, so then inside of there, we'll put in a div class of container, and all the text inside of this container is going to be centered. So text centered. And then inside of here, we're going to have a heading and a subheading as well. So we're going to put h2 class equals text hyphen uppercase and give us your email. Okay, and then we're going to do an h4 class of text uppercase as well. And we'll give you awesome stuff like beta invites and discounts. Get rid of that semicolon there, and then h4. All right, so let's save this just to see what it looks like right now in the browser. Okay, so we'll make some adjustments. Doesn't look like the greatest thing you've ever seen. So underneath that, we're gonna have a form. So we're just gonna put a basic form tag in here. Inside of here, we're gonna have a div class of form-group. And this is specific to Bootstrap forms. So if you check out the Bootstrap 4 documentation, you'll see how you basically set it up. And the way you do that is to attach a form group. And we're going to put row. And then we're going to give ourselves some padding here. Padding top of large 5. Padding bottom of large 5. And then padding top 5. All right, inside of here, we're going to have a column. So div class equals call -small 12. So we want these to stack on top of each other. This is going to be the container for the text field where you enter the email. And then also call medium 5. So on medium sizes and up for screen sizes, this will occupy 5 columns. So it's going to be left aligned to a submit button. And then offset -MD on medium and up 2. So the offset class is something we haven't used before, but we're using it now. And what this does is it pushes over the our column here by 2 columns. All right, so we'll see how this works. I'll show you a before and after real quickly, just once we get that text field in here. So we're going to put in an input type of email. Class is form control, and again, this is specific to Bootstrap 4. And then margin bottom, we're just going to give it 4. ID, you can put whatever you want. Example input. And then we're also, if you want to remain consistent in applying your area right here, area or area, I'm not really sure how you pronounce that. And then also placeholder equals let's see, enter email. All right. So let's save this for now and see what it looks like. Okay, so notice how this is where the first column begins. There's probably another column right here. So it pushed it over to the left, or to the right rather, by 2 columns, and that's what that offset does. Now, of course, if we bring this back to a small screen size, we'll see it occupies the whole 12 because we added call smallum 12 to it. All right, so let's keep on going. So next, I'm just going to copy this part and we're going to paste it. All right, so for this, we're not going to offset anything. This is where our button's going to go. So let's delete that. We're going to put in button, type equals submit, class equals btn. Again, all this stuff is specific to buttons for Bootstrap 4. So btn primary, btn block, text uppercase to make it uppercase, and then bg primary for the background color. So it's going to be that teal color that we have defined. All right, so let's save this now. All right, so as you can see, it's a little bit too large. Right here, this all looks good. And by the way, we're going to style this so it's not all white. It's too much contrast in my opinion. And the reason this is too large is because I didn't put this correctly. I didn't change this from 5 to 3. So let's save that. There we go, much better. Okay, so let's make some adjustments here to this area. We're also going to give it a custom background, which is what the third image is for in our assets folder. So let's go ahead real quickly. We'll go to styles.sass, which is right here. And we'll start off by referencing our join container. All right, so the background is going to be URL assets screen1.jpg, no repeat. Background size is cover. And then we're going to, well, let's go ahead and save just so we can see where we're at currently. There we go. It's got like a screenshot of like a first-person shooter or something back there. Kind of 2 unrelated images. That's no big deal though. And then also it's referenced our H2, which is embedded inside or nested inside. So we have letter spacing. We're going to make it like 4 pixels. And then font weight, bold. Blah. And then you see what that does to this section right here. Let's also reference the H4. This is going to be color simply gray. And that will help create distinction here between these 2 elements. All right, so the primary thing that we want drawn to in terms of visual hierarchy is this section right here. And then form control. This is going to allow us to style that text field. So background, we're going to make it not black, but kind of close. So we just want 6 ones. And then also we're going to give it a border of 3 pixels solid and F2, or no, 2F, 2F, 2F. Let's save this so far and just see what happens. All right, that's better. And then also we're going to give it some padding to just enlarge it a little bit of 10 pixels. So there we go. And then also finally, our very last rule set to define is our button. We're going to make it a padding of 12 pixels, beefing it up a little bit, border of none, and a color of black for the text. And then there we go, guys. Oh, we also may want to make that cursor pointer. All right, awesome. And so that, my friends, is it for this 100% free course, of course. And so yeah, let's go ahead and check it out, what it looks like on the various screen sizes. So we're getting down to tablet size. This is a smaller tablet size. Kind of cool how the background like that adjusts based on our background cover. And then also smartphone size. Awesome. Okay, so I hope you guys learned a lot. Be sure to, if you're watching this, for instance, on Udemy, to check out my author profile for more courses. If you're watching this on a site like Skillshare, please do the same. And if you're at Coursera, or my other site, Coursera.com, be sure to check out other courses there and look me up on YouTube as well. I'm pumping out content left and right like a madman. All right, see you later.